Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen D. Kelley, and this is the Stephen D. Kelley Show, and we are TruthCat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. It's August 14th, 2025. It's now 6 p.m. in La Puente, California. I had a title for the show. What is it? I'll just give it to you here real quick. Wasting time, I know. Intertel, Palantir, CIA, MOSSAD, Mafia. Don't worry about the title. Look, okay, just pay attention. If you're listening to this much of the show so far, that's good. You need to listen to the whole thing. Rarely do I do a show that is important as the one I'm going to do tonight, mostly because the information is going to affect every single one of you probably for the rest of your life, and if this doesn't give you motivation to complete our mission and let you visually see exactly the nature of the enemy that we're dealing with and what they have done and are doing to you as we speak, then you're lost. So we're going to spell it all out tonight, but you need to pay attention and you need to stick around and you need to stay to the end. And hopefully it's not going to go over everybody's head. But here's the thing. I myself, like all of you, most humans, sometimes I can have something right in front of my face and I won't see the significance, or I won't connect the dots, or I won't understand what it is that I'm looking at, or why it affects me, or why I should pay attention. Kind of like me and the Occupy the Getty mission and all those people out there that notice and maybe not notice, but, don't really understand why it's significant or what it has to do with them or anything. It's kind of the same thing. Years and years and years go by before, if you're lucky, something snaps and you go, wait a minute, now I get it. Well, I've had moments like that a lot, but I'll tell you, I'm guilty of being oblivious. And many times in my life, this has happened because of my dealings with the CIA and the Mafia and all that sort of thing. And I'm like everybody else. I think I'm just a normal person, and this sort of thing doesn't happen to normal people. And it's only in the movies, and we're programmed to think that this is just drama and fiction and so much, so much television. Well, the reality is that every single aspect of your life is affected by this, and hopefully you're going to see it tonight. And the enemy does a really good job of hiding, and right now we've reached a moment where there really is nowhere left to hide, and it's right in front of your face, and all the little changes and things that they use to try to control the narrative are just not quite working. Now, I will mention that Grok, Grok had a big timeout. Grok actually was suspended from Twitter, which is funny because, like I said, unlike a human, they let him back. They just had to reprogram him, kind of like re-educating a human. We don't get that. But anyway, the point is that Grok comes back after a day of reprogramming and tells everybody that the reason why it was shut down was because it probably had said something anti-Semitic. Well, what we found out was that what it did say was that, yes, Israel was committing genocide, the United States was complicit, and Netanyahu was a war criminal, and also went on to say that of all the leaders out there, that Donald Trump was probably the worst felon criminal in Washington, just by the basis of all his indictments. So these are all interesting things. But anyway, that all got swooped and swiped and gone. But you know what I think really happened? What I think really happened is that the truth of Intertel has come out. It's been out there, but suddenly, because of Palantir, it's a big deal. And if you haven't been paying attention, it's going to take over your life. It's doing that right now. Now, what got my attention, of course, is Nick Fuentes talking about Intertel and linking it to Palantir and things like that. And I was oblivious to that, but here's the thing. I don't know how old Nick Fuentes is, but my experience with Palantir, not Palantir, but Intertel, started back in 1990. Was it 1990? Yeah, 1990. Yep, 1990. Iran-Contra. All kinds of things happened. So we're gonna look at a timeline. We're gonna talk about Intertel. We're gonna talk about the CIA, the NSA, and the Mafia, and all that stuff. Because remember, like I said, I was fooled. I didn't know what I was doing when I well, I'll just, for my own story before I get into the deep history, I'll just remind everybody that it was in 1987 when I had my first interaction with what I thought was CIA. Of course, this turned out to be people connected to Don Nixon, who would turn out to be Intertel, but we wouldn't know that. We would just accept, oh, okay, CIA, sure. This was during the whole getting arms to Iraq business. Anyway, it wasn't until the Iran-Contra thing, sometime around 1990, when I got involved with them again, what I thought was the CIA, only it wasn't. It was the NSA, the Oliver North gang, and I was, again, directly providing material to the Oliver North gang for use in the war, the guerrilla war, the terrorist operation that the United States was conducting with the Contras in Nicaragua. That was terrorism. That was the NSA. That was the Oliver North gang. But I still thought it was the CIA. I didn't know. It wasn't until years later when I got into another gig with the CIA working on the plasma beam representing them, and I took the gig, that they told me before I took the gig that, oh, that was Oliver North that you were working with. That wasn't us. I had no clue. I mean, I should have known. It was right in front of my face, but I did not know. But other things were also right in front of my face, like Don Nixon, the guy that recruited us, and the events that took place with my brother and his interactions with Don Nixon. I mean, while I'm busy doing all this stuff with the NSA and the Contras, there's all these other things going on with my brother and myself in the background. One of which was my brother basically conning a bunch of money out of Don Nixon, the nephew of Richard Nixon, the President of the United States, who was working for the number one mafia kingpin in the world at the time, which was Robert Vesco. Now, when I say number one mafia kingpin in the world at the time, we're going to explain what that means and how that works by explaining to you Intertel and the history of Intertel and where Robert Vesco fit in and where Nixon fit in. But the bottom line is that at the time that this was going on, roughly in 1990, Robert Vesco was holed up in Cuba. Imagine that. Because he had been kicked out of all the other countries that he had been seeking refuge, like Guatemala, Honduras, and various different islands. He tried to buy an island in the Bahamas, but the Bahamas, we're going to be talking a lot about the Bahamas, but that's where all this stuff was based. But anyway, bottom line is that he was arrested and thrown in jail by Cuba, by Castro. Now what? One of the things that I did not realize, which should be clear here, why did they do that? Well, people could say, well, it's because he was a big drug smuggler and he broke laws that went against the rules in Cuba. But it was worse than that, because Intertel Mafia was the mafia that put the hit out on Castro and made all the attempts on Castro's life. It was the mafia that did the JFK assassination, etc., etc., etc. People go, well, that was Mossad, that was Italian, that was these guys. It's the same thing. This is what we're going to show you. It's all the same thing. Well, that little event put me right in the middle of this whole Intertel saga, because even back then we knew it was Intertel. That was one of the things. They used the word. Now I find it funny because there was an idiot in one of these little groups that I'm in, Tinfoil Hat Group, BMC, whatever. Some guy he does countertops for a living, trade guy. But he gave me shit because I said, "Hey, I'm doing a show tonight about I'm going to explain the connection between Intertel and Palantir and the Mafia and MOSSAD and the CIA and everything, and I'm going to put it all together for you." And he says, "You're just saying that you were working for Intertel because Nick Fuentes mentioned it." Again, I don't know how old Nick Fuentes is, but my association with Intertel is, let's see, what is that, 35 years old? 35 years old. All right, let's start this little journey. This little journey. Now, you see, the thing that really got my attention before I start going into the ancient history of this mafia and how they became the number one mafia in the world, what really got my attention, of course, was, well, Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. Now, the Elon Musk connection blew me away because as I started connecting all these little dots and looking at the dates, a lot of stuff really hit home, especially very, very personal stuff and stuff that has huge, huge implications for the entire world. So let's go back to the very beginning here. Now, first of all, I suppose you could go back to the Rothschilds and you could have all these different mafias acting all over the place, and the Khazar Mafia and the Russian Mafia and all these various mafias. But during the time of Lucky Luciano, who was a big mobster, you can look him up, he set up an organization which was pretty extensive. I think they called it the Corporation. But his operation was extensive, and of course it involved money laundering and all sorts of things. And he had, of course, gambling and casinos and things operating offshore in the Bahamas. Wonderful, wonderful little thing he set up. But anyway, he got put in jail. He got shut down, and he was basically shut down by Thomas Dewey. I guess Thomas Dewey was a prosecutor over there in New York. He ran for president. But the thing is that what he really was mafia, another kind of mafia, CIA. Not just CIA, but Khazar Mafia. Okay? The enemy. That's the thing, is that Khazar Mafia gets in law enforcement and they go, look what we're doing. We're taking down this Italian mafia. What are they really doing? They're consolidating power. That's our government. But you see, those kind of wars, they took place for a long time, and they didn't really end until, say, Nixon. And it was Intertel that was really played that role in ending it all. Now, as I said, the Dewey set up, he took this operation of Lucky Luciano's, and he turned it into a CIA operation, at least alleged CIA operation. But again, one of the things we're going to learn is when I say CIA, what I'm really talking about is Intertel Mafia. Okay, that's an interchangeable word. When I say NSA, I'm saying Intertel Mafia. When I say Mossad, I'm saying Intertel Mafia. When I'm saying Israel, I'm saying Intertel Mafia. When I say Chabad, I'm saying Intertel Mafia. I hope you're getting the picture. But anyway, so there was a guy, Crosby. He took over. He was a big guy in this thing, and he ran Resorts International, and he died, or he was incarcerated, whatever. He turned it over to Donald Trump. But more and more stuff was going on. And it was in the early 60s that this entity that they would call Intertel, which would be just some sort of public name for this mafia operation, would begin its attack on Fidel Castro. quite a bit. So when you think about 60s mafia operations, that's really what we're talking about. But eventually, I don't know when exactly the date was that they did this, but they started calling themselves a private eye firm. Okay. I believe this is probably during Nixon. But what they did was, remember, bear in mind, this is a mafia calling itself Intertel, but they billed themselves as experts on consulting with government bodies and private entities, corporations and such, and helping them, consulting them in such a way that they could avoid the inconvenience of doing business with another company or firm or government or entity that would actually be mafia. This was actually their business model. This is a private company. And the way that they did this was they crunched data. So they've been doing this since forever. They would look at everything they get as private eyes, and they would crunch this data, and they would use it to create dossiers on everybody and everything. And this is how they knew. But of course they knew who all the mobsters were because they were the mobsters. And what happened essentially was that all of the other mafias had no choice but to join that corporation, to become part of this grand conglomerate of mafia bodies that was Intertel, because that was the only way they would have access to any corporate business. It was, in other words, if you wanted to deal with the government, if you wanted to play in the big leagues, you had to join this Intertel thing because they had the monopoly on access to official government circles and corporations. And they did this because of this public entity that they called Intertel. Because here's the thing. A public entity, when I say public, I mean a private entity, meaning a company, a corporation, has certain, shall we say, freedoms that a government entity doesn't have, like the CIA or the Department of Justice or typical law enforcement, FBI. They're going to be restrained by certain rules and integrity and all that sort of thing. Keep them from doing certain things in their pursuit of whatever it is they're trying to acquire, like information. Now, a private institution like Intertel doesn't have these restraints and can do whatever it wants and then present its findings or what it suggests are, let's just say, admissible evidence in court, and everyone else will overlook. And this is something that you'll see is very common now. Even when we talk about real estate fraud and government takeover of real estate, you're seeing private enterprises, billion-dollar corporations, developers becoming quasi-public institutions, public entities by creating homeowners associations and housing ventures and complexes. And this is happening all over, and this is how they create slush funds. This is mafia. You're going to see that everything we talk about is mafias. But anyway, this is what they did. So that was around Nixon. So basically after Nixon, it all became one big mafia. And bear in mind, all the Italian mafias and Colombian mafias and Russian mafias and Chinese mafias and all that, they were still out there. They were still doing their thing, but they were operating under this Intertel umbrella. Well, let's see. What else happened? Well, somewhere along the line, this concept, data collection, became the basis of everything, and it always has been. Now, I'm going to kind of skip ahead to where I get involved. Now, bear in mind, Epstein and these guys, it's all the same thing. I mean, when I'm talking about my associations with Vesco, assume that that's Epstein, that's Trump, that's all these guys. But again, what's interesting, of course, is the Musk and the Palantir stuff, Peter Thiel. So let me see if I can look at that. I'm going to do my best to kind of give this to you in a nice, clean way. I wanted to try to come up with a nice timeline, but I'll do my best. But let's just say this is that, well, let's see, what was it? Oh, okay, here we go. All right. Peter Thiel, who happens to be gay and Jewish, started a company called Confinity. That was in 1998. And Elon Musk, he started a company called XCOM. That was in 1999. And those companies, in basically a year later, they merged and they became PayPal. Well, they merged and became PayPal, but roughly a year later, they were purchased by eBay. Now, here's the thing. PayPal was funded by Intertel. It was funded by, when people say it was funded by MOSSAD, it was funded by the CIA. This was in the year 2000. What they're saying is it was funded by Intertel. So this is Mafia. And coincidentally enough, in 2002, eBay buys PayPal for $1.5 billion, a steal, right? Well, the thing is that eBay is CIA. You could say eBay is CIA. I used to run around and say, well, all these corporations like Lockheed and this company and that company, they're CIA. No, they're Intertel. Okay? It's slush fund money that funds these companies. And bear in mind, these intelligence collection agencies, these spy agencies, they're going to be investing in all of the new tech. And of course, this new digital money thing, that was a big deal. Now, certain things had to happen for PayPal and eBay to come into existence, coincidentally. And back in roughly 1990, when I was dealing with the NSA or Intertel, I was involved in Intertel, I had my big falling out. And of course, shortly thereafter, my brother had his big falling out. And, subsequently, this caused the, incarceration and eventual death of Robert Vesco, the head of Intertel. But one of the more interesting things that happened sometime shortly after the year 2000 or the year 1990, was my brother became involved in ultra-fast high-speed imaging, ultra-fast CT scanning, or imaging, modern imaging. And back in those days, when this was somewhat in its infancy, the resolution of the scans were pretty incredible because a lot of data was used. In other words, when you had a scan done, you got the full treatment. Of course, if you go have a scan now, you're only going to see segments. You're not going to see the full body digitized. But back then, that's how it was done. But what's important is that this was a medical procedure. It was digital. It was being performed at a location where these machines were that had computers that would store this data. And this data had to be able to be available to general practitioners, doctors, whoever down the line, medical personnel that would want to review these images for the purposes of diagnosis and treatment. That's the purpose of the whole technology. But in order to do that, a method had to be created so that these files, these digital images, these medical images, these private images of a person, these scans, could be sent over the internet and retrieved by the private doctor without anyone along the way gaining access, compromising it, and, ruining the whole HIPAA thing, the Health Information Privacy Act, which basically says that anytime this information is being transmitted, it needs to be protected so that it's not divulged, because this is a huge crime to divulge and abuse patients' medical records. Now, this is a big reoccurring thing, people. This theme right here, violation of HIPAA agreements, is going to become a very, very big thing, because ultimately every single aspect of Intertel and Palantir and all the various little BS agencies and entities that have sprung up to try to hide what's going on here are all doing the same thing. They're gaining access to every single bit of your data, and we're going to make a list of the data that they're getting, and they're putting it in a big, huge database that they can crunch with algorithms and do whatever they want with. That's Big Brother. That is the worst case scenario that's happening right now. Trump has actually given Palantir, what is it, 1.5 billion to set up a database on every single human in the USA. Now, back to the 90s when this scanning technology was being developed. A couple of things that were interesting. First of all, Clinton was president during the time, and when he learned about this scanning technology, he says, hey, we need to scan everybody. We need to get a digital scan of every human and store it in a big giant database. That was something that they wanted to do. They thought, yeah, we need to do this. That was biometrics. Okay? Not just any kind of biometrics, but biometrics that contain every single aspect of the insides of your body. The keys to your health. Everything. Not your DNA, but every aspect of your internals. Now, again, like I said, in order for this information to be sent over the internet, it had to be encrypted so that it was private and it could be recovered and decrypted and recovered, and no one else that wasn't supposed to have it wouldn't get it. Well, here's the thing. My brother invented high-speed internet encryption for this purpose. He basically paid somebody in India to write the software and then patented it. Anyway, without this high-speed internet encryption, there would be no eBay, no PayPal, no internet as we know it, nothing, none of that. No Amazon, no YouTube, none of it. It all depends on high-speed internet encryption. So, this is where it starts. Now, we like to say, those of us that are inventors and we're in the business, we used to know there's certain things we didn't say, we didn't write down, we didn't talk about over the phone, we didn't email. If you had information that you didn't want the CIA to have, you didn't put it out there. Okay? You didn't say it. Because we knew. That was just one of the things we knew. Business ideas, this or that, whatever. But you know what? High-speed internet encryption, are you kidding? They ran with that. They took that and they created the world that we know today. So does it surprise you that eBay buys PayPal, or that PayPal was Intertel, CIA, that they created the software for it, or guys like Musk or Thiel were involved? Why were they involved? They're Intertel. Intertel goes out and gets everybody. They give them money. They invest money in them, just like they gave my brother money thinking he was going to do something, because they thought he was me, of course. And that eventually led to the death of Robert Vesco. Interesting, isn't it? Well, let's go back here, back to Musk. and those guys. So when all that was going on, I had no clue. But the fact that they were asking for, Clinton had been doing the Human Genome Project. Maybe you heard about that. Well, that was just being created about the same time that the scanning technology became available, about the same time that high-speed internet encryption was created, and about the same time they realized what they could do with it. Thanks to Mr. Musk and Mr. Thiel. So what happened? Let's see. Let's see. They took their money that they got from eBay, and Thiel, he set up hedge fund companies. He set up Clarion Capital. He set up Valor Ventures. You see, that was in 2010. He set up Mithril Capital, 2012. But in 2004, he set up Palantir. Now, when he set up Palantir, it did nothing but serve the CIA. Nothing but. That was it. Oh, he also bought 10% of Facebook. Now, remember, we're talking about the guys that basically stole high-speed internet encryption, owns 10% of Facebook. Is that a big surprise? Come on. It's like too big to sue. Nobody can sue eBay. Nobody can sue Facebook. Nobody can sue AOL. Nobody can sue any of these big, huge damn things. Nobody can sue Tesla. Nobody can sue Musk. They've got too much money. It's like Trump. You can't sue him. Ought to be a law, huh? Okay, so like I said, Palantir was CIA, 100% CIA. In 2001, we had 9/11. Now, we all know that was a big Intertel, MOSSAD, CIA false flag. It was Intertel. You don't even need to say Mossad. It was Intertel. Either way, 2001. The CIA had the spy gear. They had the phone taps. They had everything. They were already collecting all the communications. They had their Echelon. They had their Wildfire. And then after 9/11, they had their Patriot Act. But most importantly, they had the algorithms that allowed them to crunch all this information and find what they were looking for. And that was the basis of Palantir, because basically, after 9/11, after a few years, they had to stop the intruding on the rights of Americans and the outright spying on everybody, because it kind of looked bad that the U.S. government was getting busted spying on everybody. So they shifted it to a private firm with no transparency and no oversight, and that was Palantir. That was 2004. And so, like I said, for years and years, they only did CIA work. That's all they did. And then they started doing their whole medical crap and what have you, but it was Intertel the whole damn time. Now, Musk, he took his money from this, $1.5 billion sale to eBay, and he started SpaceX. Oh, yeah, what a great idea, SpaceX. Who do you think funded SpaceX? Intertel, the CIA, the Department of Defense, the government mafia, the mafia that was the government. We didn't even talk about Howard Hughes. I should talk about Howard Hughes really quick. There was a little story here. Maybe I can find it. It was in Harper's Bazaar. Don't let me forget Datavant. It's one of the latest companies that just bought it. Just bought Intertel. Hey, before I start talking about Howard Hughes, I'm just going to mention Intertel became, what do they call themselves? Here it is. Ontellus Company. Okay? A medical canvassing group. We'll talk about what that actually means, medical canvassing, but that wasn't that long ago. Now that's basically when a big fish swallows a little fish, but then it assumes the identity of the little fish. Okay, and in this case, Intertel buys Ontellus, and then calls itself on Telos like it's like, what? Intertel, what? We're on Telos. We're on Telos. Intertel, that's an on Telos company. It's kind of like when I worked for PerkinElmer. PerkinElmer got bought by EG&G. EG&G is one of the most notorious contractors over in Area 51, and they buy PerkinElmer, a much smaller company, a significant company, but still much smaller. What do? They start calling their whole conglomerate PerkinElmer. They drop the inconvenient EG&G name. Anyway, like I was saying, back in the 60s when they were doing this, let me see if I can find the little story. One of the big, they didn't hide it. They had everybody working for them. See, I've got all these little stories of Intertel. I should be able to find this here pretty quick. But, here it is. Spies for Hire. Okay, now this came out in 1974. All right. What was it? December 20th, 1974. I was still in high school. Harper's Magazine reports that a privately owned intelligence gathering organization has quietly expanded into a worldwide spying and security network that in many ways rivals the CIA. The organization in question, based in the Bahamas, is named International Intelligence Incorporated and is known as Intertel by its multinational corporate clients. Among the individuals and groups linked to Intertel, according to Harper's, are Howard Hughes, Robert Vesco, Richard Nixon, Bibi Rebozo, E. Howard Hunt, the ITT Corporation, and allegedly members of the Mafia. Okay, ITT, that's code for Nazi. Okay, just throw that in there. They did the Philadelphia experiment. They're Nazis. Intertel, after being created by a gambling interest in the Bahamas, that means Mafia, in the early 1960s, had expanded to the point where it now has offices discreetly located in London, Toronto, Washington, D.C., New York, and Los Angeles. This mysterious corporation, Harper states, is for hire by major multinational corporations around the world. It functions, the magazine says, much like a private CIA gathering intelligence data on individuals and political movements posing a threat to its clientele. The current staff of Intertel reads like a who's who of intelligence agencies. Among those on the Intertel payroll are former top agents of the CIA, the FBI, National Security, NSA, federal drug agencies, Internal Revenue, U.S. Organized Crime Strike Force, and Defense Intelligence Agency. Now here's the final line. One of the Intertel's most famous assignments was to secretly spirit Howard Hughes out of Las Vegas to the Bahamas 4 years ago. All right, let me just tell you the little quickie story about Howard Hughes, who at the time was extremely wealthy, but he was an extremely important man. They didn't spirit him out. He didn't pay them to do it. They kidnapped his ass. They kept him locked up. They controlled him. They took him over until he died. They looted his fortune, looted it. And one of the things they did was to take the Howard Hughes Medical Agency, or whatever the hell it was, the corporation, and they passed laws, this was Nixon, of course, which basically privatized all medical in the United States, because before that, it was not for profit. It was a public service. All medical was a public service in the United States. Everything in the United States, all medical. And they took that away, and it became what it is today. It's true. Anyway, the point is, if you look at these agencies, it's up front in your face, it's Mafia. It doesn't rival the CIA, it is the CIA. It smells like Mafia, it is Mafia. It's in the Bahamas because it's Mafia, just like Epstein, just like Epstein Island, just like Vesco, all that shit. It's offshore. They did illegal crap. Why did they have people in the organized crime strike force? So they could prey on the other mafias until they all became Intertel. Why did they have people in the IRS? So they can screw with your tax records and they can find out dirt on you. But they decided that the real pay dirt, of course, was in medical, and that's why they went into that whole so-called medical canvassing thing. So now, what they've done, and by the way, as I mentioned, this company I was just telling you about, Ontellus, it just got bought. It just got bought by another company, supposedly. I don't have it in front of me now, but data, whatever, I said the name earlier. Anyway, that just happened this year. This is how they hide this crap. Let's talk more about what Ontellus does. Musk and these guys. Now, like I said, Palantir got a $1.5 billion contract from Donald Trump to basically set up a spy system on all of us. Okay. Now, Palantir, Peter Thiel, is a J.D. Vance guy. He owns J.D. Vance. Now, Doge, that came in as the Department of Government Efficiency, was given free rein access to all government records, including your tax returns, all your legal stuff, and my Social Security, the motherfuckers. And I'll tell you, this hits home deeply because, I like to take my Social Security money and I like to go buy pot, but I don't need the government knowing how much pot I buy, where I buy it, what strain I buy, what date I bought, et cetera, and how much money I paid. Don't need that. But they use all of that information. They collect all of that information. If you're using a debit card, you're screwed. And they're forcing me now to use a debit card. I can't just get my paper check in the mail and go to Walmart and cash it and go spend my cash freely with no worry about somebody keeping track, some Palantir keeping track of me like they're actually doing. But that's what they're doing. So what else? What else does this Palantir do? Well, in the pursuit of evidence, they're going to do everything. They're not just going to crunch all of the data on the internet and everything. They'll use spy drones to follow up on you. Now, of course, they use greed to sell these services. They market this as a service to insurance companies, okay? Like this Intertel or Ontellus group, this medical canvassing. What the hell is that? They think, okay, insurance claims, fraud investigation. Again, I just got to remind you guys, this pisses me the fuck off because it's fucking Grok and all these other assholes have been playing down this Mafia shit from day one, saying, oh, yeah, it's just medical canvassing. It's innocent. It's no big deal. These are the same guys that wanted to build a database of whether or not you took your shot, your COVID shot. They were going to do that. What else they do? They will search your storage facilities to see if for property loss. They will search all social media, including the deep web. They will search all your past treatments for medical history. They will verify all insurance coverage and dates versus date of injury. They're actually involved. They will look for drug addiction. They will investigate drug compatibility. They're involved in your doctoring right now. Attorney information, any information legally, they're going to know. They're going to dig deep. And they're only going to provide what's court admissible. But you know what? All of this is a violation of HIPAA. All of this is CIA. All of this goes through Israel. All of this is Mafia. It's all going through Israel. Israel has complete control because that's just where the Mafia is. And Musk, when he came in there with his Doge and was given access to everything, guess what? That's gone now. But you know what? All those Doge people, they're Palantir people. They're all CIA. They're all NSA. And they're going to spy on you, and they're going to know everything about your education, your health, your taxes, your Social Security. They're going to have all your imaging records. Imaging, there's that imaging again. Your emails, your phone calls, all your social media, all your internet. They're going to get your DNA. They're going to know everything about your family and your entire work history. And that's what they do. They got you by the balls. And the only thing that's going to stop this, do I need to tell you what's going to stop this? I think you know. There's only one thing. Occupy the Getty, right? Whoops. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I was trying to set up my other thing here. Let me just do that real quick. Anyway, people, here's the thing. If you can't see that everything's a mafia, it's not that well, let's put it this way. The CIA doesn't control the mafia. The mafia controls the CIA. The CIA is the mafia. Everything that you want to blame on whoever, 9/11, Israel, MOSSAD, Intertel Mafia. JFK assassination, Intertel Mafia. COVID, Intertel Mafia. All the wars, Intertel Mafia. Everything. Donald Trump, Intertel Mafia. Every fucking thing they're doing, Intertel Mafia. Let's not forget Tesla and Boring Company and all that. You're lucky they didn't get their vaccine ID shit, but they're going to get it anyway. It's not going to matter because they're going to have all your DNA and everything in one big database. And you know what? Ultimately, it all goes back to that internet, that high-speed internet encryption that made it all possible way back when. I suppose I had a little role with the whole computer technology. But either way, if you can't see by now that there is no government, there's no law enforcement, there's no political parties, there's no borders, nothing. It's just a big mafia war going on. This is what we need to focus on. Yes, and obviously Occupy the Getty is the answer. Because those Getty guys, those Nazis, all that stuff, that is Intertel. It's always been Intertel. It's all Intertel. It is the corporation that holds all these things. And you know, I'll tell you, every day these guys, their money, these CIA guys, these mafia guys, they're buying up companies that have access to medical data. And they're making it all part of this big giant group, all connected to this Palantir crap, this internet, this Intertel crap, this mafia spy gear. Every day. So, at the very least, this entire thing is one big HIPAA violation. All of it. But because these companies are sounding legit, hey, insurance, you know, that's a big scam. They need this information, right? So they can deprive you of your benefits and they can say, hey, you went to the health club, you're smoking pot, you did this, you did that, you're not going to get paid. We're going to take away your social, we're going to take away whatever. It's coming. We're going to turn off your computer. It's coming. Social credit scores, it's all coming. Nothing can stop it except for Occupy the Getty. All right, people. Obviously, I could have done a better job. I could list this, but if you're not paying attention, and yeah, I have a connection. Been connected to it since like forever, and so yeah, I should have seen it, but now, if you don't see it, and you don't do anything about it, or you're just going to live with it, it's already too late. It may be too late, but who cares? You still need to keep working on this Getty thing because if you haven't learned anything, it's they know everything about you already, everything. And they certainly know if you're one of us, and if you're a part of this Getty mission. Obviously, they know that. If you want to help me out financially, hey, PayPal, Stephen Kelley 714@yahoo.com. They obviously know you're sending me money, but you know what? Fuck them. They're not going to hurt you because, you know, that sounds really sad. You send me money and you'll have protection, but I don't give a damn. You're in my circle. You're protected. Fuck them. They are more afraid of us than we are of them. And if you need more proof of that, just remember, Robert Vesco was the head of Intertel, and he died in a Cuban jail because of me. Okay? You're welcome. All right, everybody. I'm going to leave it there because I don't know when this thing's going to turn off, But again, I want to thank you for being with us. And if you can help me out on the PayPal, please do, because I'm trying to save up and get some new glasses. Seriously, they're like $800 a piece. It's really awful. But yeah, and sometime this week I got to go down on Social Security and make it so that they can give me a damn piece of plastic debit card. So I don't, because by September, I guess I'm not going to get any more papers. So awfulness. All right, guys. Also, please, if you haven't joined the page yet on Telegram, please do. And I'm happy to say that our presence on Twitter seems to be expanding rapidly, and you just can't hide this stuff. And when I hear the bullshit coming from Grok, and when he talks about me and belittles this Intertel thing and acts like it's nothing, and I realize, fucking Grok, you are Intertel. Your boss, your owners, your programmers, it's all Intertel. All of it. I don't care what name of what corporation or who gets hired to do what job. At the end of the day, it's all Intertel. All right, people. So let's say Intertel all day, and like I said, I don't care what they try to tell you about it being nice and sweet and all that. It is Mafia, Intertel Mafia. It's all Mafia. Let's stop blaming the Jews or blaming the Democrats, the Republicans, or whatever. It's the fucking Mafia. Which Mafia? The Intertel Mafia, the International Intertel Mafia. That's all we need to remember. Let's blaze that into their memories of everybody. And how does that serve us? Because the Intertel Mafia is the Getty. Getty is Intertel Mafia. And by occupying the Getty, we destroy the enemy. Who's the enemy? The Intertel Mafia. You want to put a name on it? It's all those people, but they are the Intertel Mafia. Again, I want to thank you all for being here. Please tune in and please join my Telegram group, Occupy the Getty / Stephen Kelley, and get active. Spread the word. And if you can help me out with this video here and teach more people about this Intertel stuff and this Palantir stuff and make sure that everyone understands that it's one big mafia, maybe we're going to get somewhere. Okay? So keep doing it. It seems like it's working. And it's working because of you. Okay? So I search for my off button. I hate this Microsoft. Yes, Trump is a pedophile. Let's not forget that. They're all pedophiles. And what else? They're all Intertel. Good night. Wait, I have to remind you. My name is Stephen D. Kelley, and this is the Stephen D. Kelley Show. We are TruthCat Radio, www.truthcatradio.com. It's 73 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny in beautiful downtown La Puente, California. It is now 6:53 p.m. That is still August 14, 2025. And once again, I want to thank you for being with me, all of you. And can't do it without you, okay? Make me famous, people. Remember, I'm the only one you know who was part of the Intertel Mafia. Not just part of the Intertel Mafia, I killed their boss. I got their boss killed. I got him in the damn jail. All right? You don't believe it? Talk to Rambo. But guess what? I don't need to make this shit up. It's real. Okay? Let's run with it. Okay, people? Thank you so much for everything. Please keep it up. You are truly the hero Jedi. I love you all. Good night. God bless. Adios. And goodbye.